You either need a new engine or you need to rebuild this one. And in this episode, I show you a shaft. I remove a screw. I hold this thing. I make things click. I hit a thing with a hammer. I pressure wash a head. I make scratching noises. And I show you this contraption. And I give you a hint about what caused all this mayhem again. Alright, the engine is apart, so the question at this point might be, what's next? And that's the part that I've never been able to do in the past. Obviously, the engine and the block is going to go to a machine shop. I'm also taking the crank as well as the pistons. When I was taking them apart, I did not notice anything that would be concerning specifically. I saw some discolorations and scarring on the bearing, on the rod bearings. But in terms of anything that was loose, anything that had play in them, because that's where our guess was in terms of the noise potentially coming from the wristband, I didn't find anything that was not normal. At least to my unprofessional eye, I didn't see anything that would be concerning. This is something that I've never done before, so I need to take this engine block and the pistons to the machine shop, and I think at that point I need to negotiate and discuss a plan. I do know that these cylinders are going to be bored. That's what I initially discussed with the machine shop. And by the way, this machine shop, they have really good references. A lot of the mechanic shops in the vicinity work with this machine shop, and I'm very optimistic, and I've spoken to them a couple of times, so I'm very optimistic about the quality of work that they're going to do. All right, so wanted to quickly show you the type of equipment and material that I use normally when I work on my cylinder heads. You can choose whatever that you're comfortable with. These are the ones that I have been using in the past and have had good success with. These are the brand new valves, by the way. We are going to use both the intake and the exhaust valves, changing them all with the OEMs. You'll also need a valve seal removal tool. We'll get to that and I'll explain why you need it and how you use it. And whether you're installing brand new valves or just refreshing the ones you already have, you'll need this tool. This tool is amazing. It can also be extremely frustrating to work with. There's a love-hate relationship I have with it, but it does get the job done, so it's the tool that we got. And on this side, we have a slew of different sandpapers with different grits. We also got buffers and circular buffers that I use with this pneumatic tool that I use for cleaning up the journals and the camshaft caps. Okay, let's talk about lubrication, because as let's say when you're grinding your valves, you need kind of a typical oil. I use just fresh 5W30 or any kind of fresh, clean engine oil will do, nothing specific. Also, as far as the assembly lube is concerned, I have used both the liquid and the grease types, and this one is the liquid type. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by any of these, and I'll put a link in the description for anyone who's interested. And this is the grease type, and you certainly need these during assembly of your camshafts and lifters, because you want to make sure all the surfaces that are in contact with each other are well lubricated upon the first startup. You'll also need this tool to remove the valve keepers and the valve springs, and for that you use this guy in conjunction with this guy, because you have to hammer them out, and I'll show you how that's done later on in this video using this tool. In my opinion, this is easier than using a spring compressor, but I do recommend using a spring compressor for putting the valves and the springs back in. You'll also want a pick tool and needle nose pliers for wrestling with the keepers on reinstall. The magnet tool helps for fishing them out too. Next is a tap I use to clean up the exhaust manifold stud threads. They tend to rust, and the heat cycles the exhaust goes through don't help. I've had scary experiences with these in the past, so now I make sure the threads are clean before anything goes back together. Alright, let's continue the disassembly of the cylinder head. And as you can see, when I'm disassembling the heads or even the block components, I like to mark everything so it all goes back to where it came from. That includes the lifters, the entire valve spring assembly, keepers, springs, and the valves. If you watched part 1, you know I do this with some other components as well, and you had seen marking and writing on the bolts and the fasteners. And in this case, I don't care as much about the valves since we're installing brand new OEMs, but components such as the valve lifters is extremely crucial that they go back exactly where they came from. There are a few different ways to remove the valve springs, but in my opinion, this tool is the fastest and easiest. The black piece is for reinstalling the springs, and this long tube is for removing the keepers and springs. You start by placing the tube on top of the valve retainer, and you hit it really hard with a hammer. I mean, a little harder, and voila! It does take some getting used to. My first few attempts were less voila and more what just happened. Once the keepers are out, you can remove the retainer and the spring. Also, note the orientation and the paint mark on the bottom of the spring. And don't forget the washer at the base of the valve spring assembly. Use your magnet to fish it out. Now you might be wondering where your keepers went. Here they are. The inside of the tube is magnetic. So the moment you hit the spring and the keepers release, they get pulled straight up into it. Pretty smart, right? Okay, since this was a lot of fun, let's do it one more time, and boom, it's out. Perfect, let's move on. Next up is removing the valve seals, and for that we are going to use this tool right here. It's pretty simple. It holds on to the sides of the seal and you wiggle it and twist it left and right, and it pulls the seal right out. It's recommended that when you remove a seal, you replace it, as sometimes during the removal process the seal gets damaged. By the way, the sign of a bad seal is burning oil and blue smoke out of your exhaust. These are wear items. As they age, they let a small amount of oil pass into the cylinders where it gets burned, so it is critical that you replace them anytime you do a valve job. Let's flip this thing over and take a look at the condition of the valves. Alright. The larger valves are the intake valves, and the smaller ones are the exhaust. If I push up from underneath with my finger, you can see it comes out easily, no problem. And it's the same thing on the other side. One thing that can happen over time as the miles add up, or even when you install brand new valves, is that the valve stops sitting completely flat and flush against the seat. So it doesn't make a perfect seal. And if it doesn't make a perfect seal, it lets a bit of air escape during the compression stroke, which that translates into obviously making less power. I wanted to verify whether there was any leak at this point with the original valves still in. One way to do this is to fill this area up with water, or better yet something less corrosive than water, and let it sit for a couple of hours. Then check for leaks. If you don't want to wait around, and you can take an air gun, point it into the exhaust and intake passages and see if bubbles form in the water. Although that test works better if you do it before the valve springs are out. The method that I think is the most reliable though is a vacuum pump. You take a standard vacuum pump like this one, attach a gauge, and then check whether the valves hold vacuum. This way we don't have to worry about the valve springs at all, because the vacuum itself pulls the valves into their seats. I've also attached this homemade gizmo to the end of my vacuum pump to help make a seal when I take the measurement. By the way, if you'd like to see how I made this tool, it's pretty simple. Leave a comment and I'll make a short little video about this.
Alright. That's pretty good. This is acceptable. It's not perfect, but it's acceptable. Acceptable.
One of the major checks you need to do anytime you pull a cylinder head is making sure the deck of the block and the head itself are flat and straight. Here I don't need to worry about the block since the machine shop is handling that, but I referred to the service manual for this engine, found the spec, and used the feeler gauge to check the head against the specification. Luckily in this case, we are within tolerance. Like I mentioned earlier, I also made sure all the exhaust and intake manifold threads were clean. I also went ahead and bought brand new studs both for exhaust and the intake side. I've had bad luck with these in the past and I just wasn't going to take a chance. Next, the OCD kicked in, and while I was in there, I buffed out as much of the dirt, soot, and grime as I could. It's obviously not as good a job as a machine shop would do, but taking the time to get the surfaces clean lets me sleep better at night. I went ahead and buffed out the camshaft journals as I noticed there was considerable amount of scratches on them. They all looked superficial and it came out quite beautifully using the circular buffer.
Alright, we are getting to the most tedious part of this, and that is the lapping process. So I'm going to start with our intakes. This is the part number that I'm using for the VQ35DE. These are the intakes, and I have 6 of these because I have 6 intakes. What we need to do, the process is pretty simple, but again, can be tedious and sometimes slightly frustrating. You take this and you need to do a couple of things. You take the valve, and you need to make sure also, one thing that I mentioned earlier is that you need to make sure you have compound that is designed for grinding your valves. You put a little bit of that on here, then you lube up the stem of your valve, and you put the valve in, and you get one of these plungery thingies. You attach it, and you start going side to side motion, and every so often you lift up, you spin 90 degrees, you go back down, and you continue, and you put moderate amount of pressure on the valve. You want to continue doing this until the pitch of the grinding noise changes. When it changes and you feel it also that the grittiness starts to change, it's time to take it out, clean up, inspect, put it back in. I'm going to do this at least 3 times before I move on to the next one. Once I have the 2 of them done, then at that point I'm going to start checking for leaks. If there's no leak detected, fantastic, I'll move on to the next 2. If there's a leak detected, I need to figure out which one of the 2, and I can show you potentially what way we can use to figure out. We can just cover the holes by hand and then detect which one of the 2 is actually leaking. All right, let's get started. All right, let's test it. Okay, I hope it seals. All right, let's do this. Yes, sir. That to me is done.
For installing the seals, I recommend using the proper tool. And make sure you lubricate the stem before the seal goes on so it doesn't tear the rubber. Then install the seal by tapping it down firmly. The sound changes as it sits. It goes a bit metallic, and that's how you know it's fully installed. Next, while I was waiting to get the block back from the machine shop, I decided to do a bit of maintenance on the rest of the drivetrain. I started by draining the transmission fluid. Then dropped the entire pan to get the rest of it out and reach the filter. There are a lot of bolts, so be patient and work your way around. then take the transmission fluid cooler out of the way. You don't have to take it out entirely, but I decided to flush the leftover fluid in there too. Call it OCD. This thing, by the way, caused me some pain and hassle later on, which I'll get to in part 3. While the fluid was draining, I pulled the torque converter out, partly to get more fluid out, but mainly to reach the transmission output seal. The seal replacement is pretty straightforward. I had a hard time finding the OEM part, so I opted for a quality aftermarket one. Next is the transmission fluid filter. I managed to find the OEM part for this one. The only thing that it didn't come with was the O-ring. I used a new O-ring since the old one looked a bit worn. Then I gently put the filter back in, making sure not to pinch the O-ring. Last but certainly not least was the tedious process of removing the old, fully embedded darn gasket. It took a lot longer than I'd imagined. Video is sped up so you don't have to watch me cuss for 30 minutes straight. Alright, you probably remember the mishaps I had with the variable valve timing back in part 1. I was taking no chances, so I decided to test the solenoids. First, remove the cover hiding the mechanism. Once it's off, notice the small strainers that keep the dirt and grime out of the mechanical mechanism of the solenoids. I cleaned those up thoroughly with brake cleaner. The testing process is pretty simple. You need 12 volts and some alligator clips to connect the 2 pins of the solenoid to your battery or any 12 volt source. If you hear a clean, strong click, you know the solenoid is in good shape. And if you don't, it's probably best that you replace them. Good progress. The first head is almost done. And we went from this to this. And from lots of scratches to almost no scratches. Now we just need to repeat this entire process one more time for the second head. All of it, every step. Then we are ready to bolt the head to the block. Speaking of the block, here's a preview of the refreshed block. Look how gorgeous it is. And here's another clip of the culprit behind this entire engine failure. I'll get into the details in the next video, I promise. And in the next and final episode of Jarvis's open heart surgery, things go a bit, well, sideways. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.